back with you once again, and it does appear that we're back to politics as usual in Washington and the United States, and I suppose that was something that that we all thought would happen around this time. Of course, we've had a week plus to celebrate and reflect upon the demise of Osama bin Laden, and what a great accomplishment that was for our nation and our country. But as Americans will always do, once we overcome a challenge and we celebrate that and we reflect on it, then we say, go ahead, bring us the next challenge. And that's exactly what Americans are doing. We're going back to the political grind, if you will, going back towards the debates and the political process, and going back and dealing with all those issues that seem to divide us so much. We're back to that already. And in doing so, Barack Obama went out on the campaign trail this week and had a very curious speech and a very curious stop in El Paso, Texas that I want to talk about a little bit. Now, first of all, I know some of you are saying, campaign trail? What are you talking about? Let's be honest here. Let's cut the BS. Any first-term president, once they get to their second half of their first term, be it Barack Obama or anybody else, essentially uses that last 2 years of their first term as campaign time. That's what they all do, whether they're Democrat, Republican, whatever. That's just the political environment that we live in. So, it stands to reason that Barack Obama is going out there on the campaign trail now and essentially making stump speeches that are not supposed to be stump speeches, that making campaign speeches that are in the guise of policy speeches. So that's what we saw in El Paso, Texas this week, and understanding that all of this at this point in his presidency has to be coming under the notion of trying to rally support for a re-election campaign, I thought he made a very curious move. He went down to El Paso, Texas, and he gave a speech on what he calls immigration reform, which in reality is taking up for the illegal aliens. This is basically what he did. And we'll talk about the details of it here in a little bit. But I found it very curious that he gets this big rally and this big speech to rally support behind him for the re-election, and he's using immigration reform as an issue that I guess he thinks he could get enough support with to get him back in the White House in 2012. And I thought that was very odd. And I'll tell you why here in a little bit. First of all, let's talk about specifically what Obama said in his speech and how off the mark he was on a few things, and then analyze that through the prism of could this type of mentality, could this type of position actually get him reelected. First of all, what Obama talked about in El Paso, Texas, and I'm going to quote a little bit here, he basically said that immigration reform, as he calls it, immigration reform is an economic imperative. He says that the U.S. can't remain competitive in the global economy by excluding talent. And it's for this reason that businesses all across America are demanding that Washington finally meet its responsibility to solve the immigration problem. Am I the only one that didn't make a lot of sense to? I mean, think about something. We currently, last time I checked, have an unemployment rate of over 9%, maybe more depending on who you listen to or who you get your numbers from or how they calculate the numbers or define them or whatever. But the bottom line is there's an awful lot of unemployed American people out there. However, Obama in this speech is almost making it sound as though there's some kind of labor shortage, and by golly, we just need these migrant workers and these illegal aliens to come in here and take these jobs because just by golly, nobody else will do them. Mr. President, there is no labor shortage in this country right now. There is plenty of labor out there raring to get to work. So there's no reason to think that we need to go somewhere else and get some illegal aliens to come in here, or migrant workers, or whatever politically correct term you want to use, to fill those jobs that supposedly there aren't people around to fill. There are people around to fill those jobs. You just got to ease the restrictions on the minimum wage and do some welfare reform, and they'll take those jobs. You know, think about the minimum wage. I'm going to try not to go off on a tangent here, but when you have minimum wages, they always serve the purpose, at least initially, of keeping certain people out of the marketplace, of keeping those who are trying to move their way up in the world and trying to move their way up in the marketplace from putting themselves in a situation where they can work for a little bit less money and get a foot in the door. If you look back in history, the minimum wage, a lot of minimum wage laws were put into place to keep African Americans from working. Walter E. Williams has done a lot of great work on that, so you can see that. I'm totally going off on a tangent there, I don't mean to, but the point being that because the minimum wage is in effect, it makes it financially irresponsible for a lot of companies to pay minimum wage for those jobs. So therefore they bring in illegals, pay them under the table at a more reasonable wage for their business purposes. So you got to correct that, and you got to put it in a situation where some types of jobs are immune to the minimum wage, and that you can pay lower wages for it. You can take those unemployed Americans, put them in those jobs, and go from there. Okay, tangent over with. But point of all of that being that there is no real legitimate reason to bring in people from abroad to do these jobs. There's no real reason to think that we are excluding talent. We've got all the talent in this country we need. 9% of it is unemployed. Maybe you should try going there. So that is an absolute red herring. And then from there, Obama went on to essentially make fun of not only the Republican Party, but make fun of those of us like you and I, who are concerned about the criminal element that the illegal aliens bring with them, and who are, in his mind, overly concerned with their danger. He was talking about his modest increases in the Border Patrol agents, and he said, now they're, talking about Republicans, now they're going to say we need to quadruple the Border Patrol. Not a bad idea, actually. Or they'll want a higher fence. Maybe they'll need a moat. And then he tries to make a joke. He says, maybe they'll want alligators in the moat. They'll never be satisfied. Truth be told, Barack, the alligator thing isn't the worst idea I've heard today, but really nobody's seriously calling for that. There are people with legitimate concerns about these criminals and what they bring with them over here, and you have just mocked that. So essentially you've alienated yourself. It's not the first time you've done it. You've alienated yourself to legal American citizens who are trying to make their way in this world by the rules, and you've put yourself in the corner of those who are coming here illegally, breaking our laws, and stealing from us. Gee, way to go, Prez. Obama goes on to say that the U.S. is assisted by legalizing the flow of less skilled labor. Come on. We've got 9% unemployment. We've got all the less skilled labor in this country we need. We've got plenty of able bodies to go out there and do whatever work that we're giving the illegal aliens right now. But if you look at Barack Obama's history, it's not the first time he said some very objectionable things in terms of illegal aliens. And it's not the first time that he's really put them on a pedestal that they do not deserve to be on. Back in April, he made a speech where he said, no matter what, and quoting again, no matter whether your ancestors landed here on Ellis Island or came here on slave ships or came across the Rio Grande, we are all connected. Think about that. He just equated people who came across the seas and came into Ellis Island, registered legally, did whatever the legal ramifications and the legal requirements and the naturalization process was to become American citizens. He's taking those people and equating them to people who come over here in the dead of night, breaking our laws, consciously breaking our laws, to come over here and take from us what does not belong to them. He equated those two groups. Likewise, he equated people who came over here on slave ships, who came over here because they had no choice in the matter and were forced into labor. He equated those people to the criminals who come over here of their own volition to steal. How messed up is that? But yet somehow he thinks that this mentality is going to win him a second term? Now, I could talk all night about my disagreements with Barack Obama on illegal immigration. You've got a pretty good taste of it already. But what I want to focus the rest of this speech, or this presentation on, is the strategic effect of this. Is this a good strategy politically? Is it a good strategy politically to align yourself and stand up for illegal aliens? Or is it not a good strategy? Now, first of all, why would anyone partake in a strategy like that? Why would anyone sit in office somewhere and say, hey, you know what we need to do to win this election? We need to go get illegal alien support. Why would they do that? Well, a lot of scholars, a lot of political observers, a lot of strategists would tell you that if you look at the demographics, the Hispanic demographic is rising in number in America and is going to, over the next 20 or 30 years, become a huge part of the electoral process. So the conventional wisdom is that Obama might be doing this in order to gain the Hispanic vote. The conventional wisdom out there is that whichever party takes control of the Hispanic vote over the next 20 or 30 years is going to have a tremendous advantage. Obama and his handlers evidently think that if you go in and take up for illegal aliens, that you're automatically going to get the Hispanic vote. Now, I would raise a question in response to that. And in honesty here, the question I'm going to raise right now is something that I honestly don't know the answer to. It's something I've been curious about for a long time. So if any of you out there have an explanation for this, or you have some stats, or you have some numbers, please feel free to let me know about them. Please feel free to send them in, because I'll be honest with you, the question I'm about to ask, I have no idea on. But it would be the first question that I would ask when encountering the idea that Obama is standing up for illegal aliens to get Hispanic votes. The question I have is this. When it comes to legal, L-E-G-A-L, legal Hispanics, in other words, Hispanic Americans who are here legally, born here, maybe they've been here a couple of generations, or those who came over and were naturalized citizens, they followed our procedures and our laws, they did it the right way, whichever camp you're in, would those people necessarily sympathize or empathize with illegal aliens? Now, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know what the legitimate answer is. It might very well be that a high number, a high percentage of legal Hispanics do empathize with illegal aliens. I don't know. I suspect that Obama and the Democrats are counting on that. But what I would think and what I would ask is that in terms of pure logic, I would think, and again, just based off of logic and an understanding of human nature, I would think that Hispanics who are legitimate American citizens, who are here legally by whatever methods that occurred, and are citizens just like anybody else is, I would think that they would have just as much of a problem with illegal aliens as anybody else would. Maybe even more so. I mean, let's face it, if you're in that, put yourself in the shoes of someone who is a legal Hispanic citizen, someone who, born in this country, parents were legal or naturalized, whatever the case is. Put yourself in their position. Here you or your ancestors have sacrificed and followed the laws and done the right thing in terms of building your life, and now you've got people within your own race crossing the border illegally, coming in under the dead of night, committing crimes, stealing from other American citizens, which include you. Why would you be in their corner? Now, maybe they are. I don't know. But I would like somebody to attempt an answer to that question, because it doesn't make sense. I would think, and I would hope, that there would be a chasm within the Hispanic community between legal Hispanics and illegal aliens. I don't know if that chasm exists, but it would make sense if it did. So, there's my 2 cents on that aspect of it. And again, acknowledging that I'm not sure what the attitude within the Hispanic community is towards illegal aliens. Maybe, just maybe, courting illegal aliens is a smart thing to do in terms of winning the Hispanic vote. I don't know. But let us assume that you court the illegal aliens, you stand up for them, you take their side, and all the Hispanics come with you. Let's assume that's the case. Do you not also run the risk of alienating other voting blocks that could be critical to your election? In other words, is it worth it to gain all these Hispanic votes and potentially lose a big block of votes somewhere else? Now, what block of votes am I talking about? Well, any political strategist worth his salt will tell you that in every presidential election, it's the independents who end up deciding the thing. And some of them will tell you about a 20% rule, where there's 20% of the population that's neither Republican nor Democrat. They fluctuate, they go one way or the other, and whoever appeals to that group and takes that group, wins the election. Now, that's probably entirely a different debate on its own, but for the sake of discussion, let's assume that that's entirely true. If that 20% of the independent voters, many of which would be middle-class voters, if they are the key to winning an election, then does this issue of being pro-illegal alien, does that play well with that group of people? Are they sympathetic or empathetic to illegal aliens? My first thought is, I doubt it. I mean, let's think about this. When you talk about the middle class, and I mentioned before, I'm a member of the middle class. We talked about that briefly on my presentation about why should I hate the rich. I'm a member of the middle class. I'm around middle class people every day. And I can tell you that at least from my experience, illegal aliens are not viewed very positively within the middle class. By and large, we don't really like them. Because by and large, we see that they're coming over here and taking what we are trying to earn rightfully and trying to earn legally, so yeah, we got a problem with it. So it makes sense to me that if you've got a president who is being so pro-illegal alien, that a lot of people in the middle class, a lot of people who are independents, would take a pretty dim view of that. I mean, think about it. You don't ever hear independent voters, and I've never heard of the large contingent, the large group of independent voters who are coming out and saying, you know what this country needs? This country needs more illegal aliens. You just don't hear that. So it makes me think that you would be running a huge risk by appealing to illegal aliens, that you might be diminishing your impact among mainstream America, among the middle class, among those of us who work legally for a living. And indeed, this is not the only area where I think Obama might be losing the independent voter and might be losing the middle class. Remember in that Why Should I Hate the Rich presentation, how I talked about the left-Chinese class warfare? And I hinted at it, but I didn't really explain it in detail. I think there's an assumption on the left that the middle class much more easily identify with the poor than they do the rich. And I don't think that's the case. But yet the American left and the Democratic Party are constantly trying, and they're trying it now, to have us, the middle class, side with the poor and then oppose the rich and blame the rich for all of our problems. What they don't get, and it shows that they truly don't understand the middle class in America, what they don't get is that most of us, not all, but most of us, have an easier time identifying with the wealthy than we do the poor. Think about it. Most of us are around the poor every day. We work with them, we see them in the stores we go to, or we encounter them in various ways. And frankly, most of us are not impressed. We hear them talking about gaming the system in terms of welfare and well, hey, go get this government grant or go get this assistance over here, and how to get the absolute most out of the government that you can. And we see, how they come into the jobs that we're in and they do the absolute minimum and do absolutely the bare minimum to get by and always are right on the edge of getting fired. Frankly, we don't identify with that. It's awful hard for us to have any empathy with those kind of people. It's awful hard for us to have any kind of sympathy with those kind of people. So I think people always will tell you that the rich have a resentment towards the poor. I think the middle class have more of a resentment among the poor than the rich do. So by trying to align us with the poor and point us against the rich, I don't think that's going to work. So here you've got a Democratic administration and Barack Obama who's taking up for illegal aliens, taking up for the poor and the welfare queens and the people who are on public assistance, and trying to expand that and shouting down any attempts to curtail that type of government assistance and unemployment and that kind of thing. And yet they think they're going to get the middle class vote. Why would they? Why would we group ourselves in with those kind of people? You see, the more that the American left and the Democratic Party overtly align themselves with those who are poor, those who are illegal aliens, those who are criminal, those who feel that they are entitled to some sort of livelihood merely by breathing air and taking up space, and that livelihood should be paid for by the rest of us, the more that the Democrats do that, the more they're going to alienate the middle class, the independent voter, and middle America. And they're already well on their way to doing it. So, if Barack Obama truly wants to win in 2012, which I don't think he's got a very good chance, but he's going to have to move way to the middle. He's going to have to abandon the illegal aliens. He's going to have to abandon the poor. He's going to have to abandon the criminals in this world. And he's going to have to get with regular Americans again. I don't think he can do it. I don't think that his upbringing, his background, what he was educated in, will allow him to do that. He thinks that the poor and the illegal aliens and the criminals in this country are justified in what they do. We disagree. And we're not just the wealthy. The middle class doesn't agree with that. So, Obama's got an uphill climb. I wonder if attaching himself to illegal aliens might be the one thing, the one straw, that breaks the camel's back in 2012. That's it for this week. Next week we're going to talk about Newt Gingrich. He's in the race now, so we're going to go ahead and give him the analysis that we have Herman Cain and Donald Trump. We're going to give him that presidential GPA and see how Newt Gingrich stacks up with everybody in the GOP race for the presidency. Until next week, this is America's Evil Genius. Godspeed.